Alright, today we're going to talk about functions. We're just going to do the first two sections of Chapter 8. We're going to do section 8.1, 8.3, and then you're going to take your 9-week test. Your 9-week test is going to be over Chapter 7 and 8 of the first two sections of Chapter 8. The first thing they want you to talk about is functions. They need you to understand what a function is, what defines a function. Certain two things that are important that goes with function are independent variable and dependent variable. Independent variable, they are values that are chosen and are not dependent on another variable. You pick those numbers. You decide what they are. They're independent of anything. You get to decide what that number is. Your dependent variable depends on the input, which, let's go ahead and do this. Independent variable can also be known as input. And another thing we call it is domain. And we also call it your x coordinate. Those are three other names for independent variable. You get to pick those numbers. You decide what they are. The dependent variable depends on the input. So let's go ahead and identify what else they call it. It's the output. They also call it the range, or also known as y. The dependent variable is your output, it's your range, it's your y, it's every one of those. They all mean the same thing. But those depend on what the input is. They are affected by the input. The way to remember which one's independent, what's different about independent and dependent. Independent is an adult. Me, I am independent. My parents don't pay for anything. My family, nobody pays for anything that I have. I pay for everything. I provide the roof over my head. I provide the food I eat. Right? I have a job. I pay for it. I don't rely on anybody else, so I'm independent. You are dependent. You rely on somebody for something. You can't drive, so you have to rely on someone to drive you. You can't afford a house, so you have to rely on someone else to provide that roof. You don't have a job, so you can't provide food. You rely on somebody. That's what dependent means. You depend on someone else, so you're dependent. I'm independent. So if you ever can't remember which one's which, think about that. I'm the independent one. I don't rely on anybody. I don't depend on anybody. You do, so you're dependent. Okay? But those are just the other names that we use. Independent domain X for independent, output range and Y. Alright, you need to write this down. So this just tells you a function. Okay, this is the definition of function. Okay, and it's a relation in which each element of the domain is only paired with one element of the range. Okay, this is the definition. You need to know that. Each element of the domain is only paired with one of the range. Because what they'll do is they'll ask you questions like, is this a function? Here, they're asking, is this a function? So what I do is I look at the domain, my independent value, my x. I look at those, my input, I look at those and I see, is it only paired with one member of the range? So I go through, is 2 only paired with 1? Is 4 only paired with 3? Is 5 only paired with 4? Is 9 paired with any number but 7? Oh, it's only paired with 7. So is this a function? Yes. This is a function. Here it asks, is this a function? And it says 2 is paired with 1 and 3. 5 is paired with 4. 9 is paired with 7. Is this a function? No. 2 is paired with 1 and 3. To be a function, it can only be paired with one element of the range. 2 can only be paired with 1 or 3, but it can't be paired with both. See how it's paired with both? So is this a function? No, this is not a function. Not a function. Now, let me point out one thing. Let's say that 4 over here isn't paired with 3. Let's say 4 is paired with 4. Right? Or let me even draw it different. Let's say the arrow is drawn to 4 over here. How about, is this a function now? Right? Is the domain only paired with one of the range? Is 2 only paired with 1? Is 4 only paired with 4? Is 5 only paired with 4? Is 9 only paired with 7? So how is it not a range? Right? Or how is this not a function? Right? It is. This is still a function. You cannot have domain paired with 2 numbers, but your range can be paired with all of the numbers. If it wanted to be, you could have this be 1 and this be 1 and this be 1. That's still a function. It doesn't matter that they all go to 1. Right? It doesn't matter that the range 1 is paired with all of the domain. Nobody cares what the range does. Domain is the only one they look at. Alright, so domain can only be paired with one partner. Here, it's got 2. It's got 2 numbers. You can't have this. Okay? But we don't care about range. It doesn't matter what range is. Does that make sense? Okay? The only one we look about is the domain. So here's what you need to do. You need to write function question mark, explain, and then write these 2 relations here, these 2 sets of numbers. Alright, now you're going to see questions that look just like this. It's going to say, determine whether each relation is a function. You have to explain. I don't want just yes or no. I want you to explain why. Here, is this a function? Someone raise your hand and tell me if this is a function or not. William, is this a function?
I'll say yes.
Yes. Why would you say yes?
Because all of the numbers pair up evenly.
Okay. Because the domain is only paired with one of the range. Okay. Use the definition of a function. Right. Yes. Each domain is only paired with one of the range. Right? Or you'd say each x is only paired with one of the y. Right? It's all the same thing. But you have to at least explain it. So I need at least write the definition of function. Okay? Each domain is only paired with one of the range. Alright, someone raise your hand and tell me if this next one's a function. Ben.
No, because 5 is paired with 1 and 5.
Hey, this is not a function. Right? Because 5, right, is paired with 2 of the range or with 1 and 5 of the range. Right? It is not paired with one range. Because 5 is paired with 2 values of the range. Alright, as long as you're trying to explain something like that, I will take it. Alright, but this is just another way of them representing a relation. If this confuses you, you could easily rewrite it like this. All of the first numbers of the word pair would be x, and the second number would be your y, right? Domain's always your x, range is always your y. Any questions? Alright, here's what you need to do. You need to write this down. Alright, there's another way of determining whether or not it's a function. Right? They'll give you just numbers like on a table, and you can see is the x only paired with one y. Right? If it's not, then it's not a function. But here, hey, it's a little bit harder to see if you were trying to figure that out. So what they did is they came up with a vertical line test. If you see a graph, right, and it doesn't necessarily be just dots like this. This is all we're going to show, but second hour they kept asking, one of their homeworks had a line, and they were confused by that. Okay, I don't know why. You just treat it like that. Those would be dots. But what we do is you draw a vertical line. Vertical line goes straight up and down, and you see if the line passes through more than one point. If it does, then it's not a function. It fails the vertical line test. So what you want is just one point per line. So if I drew a line here, how many points went through it? 1. So it's still a function, right? Here, still a function. How many points here? 1. Still a function. Here. Here. 2. So is it a function? No, because it fails the vertical line test. It has more than one point going through this vertical line, so it is not a function. Right? Not a function. And if it says explain, then go ahead and explain. I'm not going to save time. We already know how to explain. You would say it fails the vertical line test because 5 has 2 points going through it. Right? Or something like that. Just saying, or give me a reason why it's not a function. Right? I like the vertical line test because it helps you to understand what is a function better. Right? With just telling you, if I never showed you vertical line test, you might have trouble understanding that one domain can only be with one range. Here, it's obvious, right? 1 on the x is only paired with 5, right? That's why there's only 1 point. If you look at 2, 2 is only paired with 4. But you go to 5, 5 is paired with what? 2 here and 6. So if I had just put these numbers, these ordered pairs on a table, you would know it's not a function because 5 would be paired with 2 and 6, just like it was on the table or the ordered pairs we just looked at on the problem before, on the slide before this, right? That Ben said it wasn't a function because 5 was paired with 2 different numbers. See how 5 is paired with 2 different numbers here? So that helps you understand the definition of a function better because you can't have 2 points on a line. Now the range, like I've said, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter on range. You could have, like these dots go through the same point on the y, or you could even have a straight line through there. We don't do a horizontal line test, do we? I haven't taught that because there's not one. We don't care about the range. So it doesn't matter what the range is. So that's why it only matters what the domain is paired with. The domain can only have one output. The output, it doesn't matter. It could be with all of these numbers. Like 1 is paired with -1 and -2 and -3 and -4. But since it's the range, nobody cares. It doesn't change anything. So this is not a function because it has this. Now, if this point or this point wasn't here, would this be a function? Yes, because everything else passes the vertical line test. All right, you need to write this down. This just tells you, this is just something that lets you know they're going to write equations and they're going to call it function notation. It's just a special way of rewriting an equation. This is what an equation looks like, y equals 2x plus 3. If they write it in what's called function notation, it looks like this. There's nothing different. Right? The only thing that's been changed is y now is written as 5, or f. They say it's f of x. Right? F parentheses x, they say that's f of x. Right? That's the only difference. Right? But our f of x is still a y coordinate. Right? Especially if they give us this and we're going to talk about putting this on a line and that type of thing, or putting this on a graph. This would be your y coordinate, right? This f of x is your output, your dependent variable, your range, your y coordinate. Right? So nothing really changes. We just do f. We just write it like this, right? Because of how they write the questions. This is what the questions are going to look like for something that's in function notation. So write this down. So here they just write it differently, and instead of saying what we've done so far, like in the first part of the book, they just had you plug in. They told you what x was, and you plugged it in. Here they're doing the exact same thing. They're telling you what x is, but instead of writing x equals 5, they write f of 5. This means the function of x equals 4x minus 7. So what they've done is they've replaced x with 5. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to replace x with 5. So here it was 4x, so now it becomes 4 times 5, right? The 5 becomes the x. 5 replaces the x. So whatever's in here takes the place of what's in here. Now you replace it. This goes there, so now that goes there as well. 4 times 5 minus 7. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 minus 7 is 13. So the f of 5 is 13. When x is 5, y is 13. Okay? But they don't write y, they write f of x. Right? Which this would be f of 5. Here, f of negative 6. So what I do is I take here it was x, and here it's negative 6. So negative 6 replaces x. Every time I see x, I replace it with what's inside here. And that's There's a couple questions that are a little bit different. I'm not going to address them. I want to see if you guys can figure them out and work them out. But the key is to getting it started is what's replaced x, right, is what goes where x is, okay? And you'll see what I'm talking about when you get to your homework. So f of -6, I just replace x with -6. So 4 times -6 minus 7. 4 times -6 is -24. -24 minus 7 is -31. So there's my answer there. Any questions? Here's your homework assignment for today.